The sun had barely set over the small village of Kombesa, a quiet place in Kano. The people there were humble, living simply, but among them stood a name whispered in both envy and resentment, Amira, the only daughter of Chief Abdul, a man whose wealth reached far beyond the borders of the village. Amira was beautiful, yes, but her beauty carried thorns. Her laughter often echoed from behind tinted car windows, mocking those who walked barefoot in the dust. She believed money could bend the world at her feet. And sadly, many around her agreed, bowing to her arrogance just to stay in her father's favor. But deep down, the villagers pitied her, for they knew the arrogance of a child often becomes the downfall of a house. It was a rainy afternoon when fate decided to draw her story in mud. The clouds hung low, and the smell of wet dust filled the air as Amira's car sped down the narrow village road. She was heading to her friend's birthday party, dressed in silk and gold, her perfume strong enough to overpower the scent of rain. On that same road, trudging slowly with a wooden staff, was Mama Rahila, a poor old blind woman known for her gentle prayers and kind words. Her clothes were patched and soaked, but her spirit was light, until a sudden roar of an engine tore through the peace. In a flash, muddy water splashed across her frail body. The cold shock made her stumble back as she shouted, "Who is this? Why have you decided to soak an old woman like me?" Amira hit the brakes. For a second, guilt pricked her heart, but pride spoke louder. She reversed the car sharply, rolled down her window, and sneered. "Hey, stupid woman," she shouted. "You're too old for my liking. Only God knows why you're still on earth." Before anyone could stop her, she got out of her car, snatched the old woman's walking stick, and threw it into her trunk. Then, with a wicked smile, she got back into the car and splashed the mud water again, driving off in laughter as the old woman fell to her knees in the dirt. And that was the moment, unseen by her eyes, a shadow passed over the sky. That night, while music and laughter filled the party hall, Amira began to feel something crawling under her skin. It started as a mild itch, but soon her body burned as if ants were biting her from the inside. She tried to ignore it, but her smile faded. When she returned home, her body was covered in red rashes, her skin swelling and burning. Her screams echoed through the mansion, waking her father. "Baba! It's itching me. Please help," she cried, tearing at her own clothes. The following morning, Chief Abdul rushed her to the biggest hospital in the city. Doctors ran tests, prescribed medicines, and gave injections, but nothing worked. The itching spread, turning to sores, and soon her beauty began to fade. Before we continue, make sure you like and subscribe, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Days turned to weeks. Chief Abdul sold land, cars, even shares in his company, all to save his only child. But her condition grew worse. Her friends stopped visiting. Even her servants began to whisper that maybe God was angry. One night, as nurses tended to her wounds, a soft-hearted auxiliary nurse approached the father. "Sir," she whispered, "please don't be angry. But maybe this sickness isn't ordinary. My father is a native doctor, an honest one. If you wish, you can talk to him." At first, Chief Abdul was furious. "Do you think my daughter's life depends on village magic?" he shouted. But after months of hospital visits, after every doctor shrugged in defeat, he remembered the nurse's words. And so, one early morning, they left the hospital quietly, covering Amira's face with a scarf, and boarded a kiki napep to the edge of the village. When they reached the compound of the native doctor, Baba Musa, something strange happened. Before they could step in, the old man rushed out, shaking his head violently. "Don't bring her here," he shouted. "There is a curse working with her. Even my shrine cannot stand it." Chief Abdul froze. "Curse? What curse? He demanded. But Baba Musa only looked at Amira and sighed deeply. Young woman, he said softly, think back. Who have you wronged? Whose tears followed you home? Amira's lips trembled. She looked down, her voice weak. I don't know. The native doctor lit a small fire and threw herbs into it. The smoke rose in spirals, changing color from white to dark blue. The air thickened with the smell of rain and dust. Then he said, I see an old woman. Blind. Dressed in torn clothes. You took something from her. And her spirit cried to heaven. Amira's eyes widened. Her father turned to her. Amira. What did you do? She broke down, sobbing. It was just a joke, Baba. I didn't mean to hurt her. I only took her stick. Baba Musa raised his hand. That stick was a staff of life, blessed by spirits to guide her steps. Without it, she is lost. And you, child, have taken her light. Chief Abdul fell to his knees. Please, Baba Musa, what do we do? The old man replied, go. Find the blind woman. Beg her for forgiveness. Only she can lift what has been cast upon your house. So the next morning, they set out again, Amira, frail and shaking, guided by her father's hands. She was now covered in sores, her face pale, her once glowing skin eaten by pain. They searched every corner of Kombesa, asking anyone who might know Mama Rahila. Finally, one old neighbor said, her children came home and found her very sick. They took her abroad for treatment. That's all I know. Amira collapsed to her knees, weeping. No, please. I didn't mean to. But there was no answer. Their lives began to crumble. The company collapsed. Debt collectors circled like vultures. Amira's health worsened until she couldn't walk without help. Her father, now a shadow of himself, often cried at her bedside. One afternoon, as he crossed the road to buy bread for her, a car honked loudly. Tires screeched, and Chief Abdul was hit. He died on the spot, his blood mixing with the dust he once ruled over. That night, Amira wailed until her voice broke. God, please, forgive me. But the walls gave no reply. Months later, she was seen on the same muddy road where it all began, now dressed in rags, begging for coins. Children pointed at her. Some laughed, others pitied. Her once golden voice was now cracked and hoarse. Help me, she whispered to strangers who once bowed before her. Please, help me. But they only turned away. For even they knew, no wealth can silence the cry of the wronged. Years later, time had changed much in the village, new faces had come, old ones had gone, and stories that once shook the land were now whispered only by the elders at dusk. Among those stories was one that never died, the tale of Amira, the fallen daughter of the billionaire. Far across the seas, in a quiet hospital abroad, Mama Rahila, the blind old woman once soaked in mud, had received treatment from her children. The doctors called it a miracle. Her sight, once lost forever, slowly began to return. When she opened her eyes fully for the first time in years, tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks. She saw light and remembered darkness. She saw her children and remembered the voice of a young woman who once mocked her by the roadside. Still, she held no hatred in her heart. If God gave me sight again, she whispered softly, it means He wants me to see what I could not before. Months later, Mama Rahila returned to Nigeria. Her children begged her to stay in the city, but her heart belonged to Kombesa, to the soil where she had prayed, cried, and lived most of her life. One morning, as she walked with a new wooden staff, she decided to revisit the area where she once begged for food and coins. The air there smelled of rain and memory. The people had changed, but the spirit of the road felt the same. As she moved closer to a corner, she noticed a frail young woman sitting on the ground, her clothes torn, her face pale, a bowl before her filled with a few coins. The woman's head was bowed, her hair tangled, when she whispered to a passerby, "Please, just a little bread, please." She stepped closer, to give her some money. The beggar lifted her head slowly, and their eyes met. Amira blinked, confused at first. Then recognition struck her like thunder. She gasped, crawled forward, and fell at Mama Rahila's feet, clutching her legs with trembling hands. "Mama! It's me, please, forgive me," she cried, her tears soaking the woman's wrapper. "I'm the one who wronged you. I took your stuff. I mocked you. Please, Mama, I've suffered more than words can tell." The people around stopped to watch. Some gasped, others whispered. But Mama Rahila only stared, not in anger, but in sorrow. "My child," she said gently, "I never cursed you. I am too small to curse anyone. The day you mocked me, I was blind, helpless, and humiliated. I only cried to God for help, not for revenge. But when He fights for the weak, His justice burns deeper than any curse." Amira wept harder, holding her legs tighter. "Mama, I've lost everything, my father, our house, my beauty, everything I once had is gone." Mama Rahila knelt beside her and touched her hair tenderly. "And yet," she said softly, "you are still alive. That means God is not done with you." She raised her face to the sky and whispered a prayer, a long, trembling prayer that carried the weight of forgiveness. "O Lord, as you gave me back my sight, give this child back her peace. Let her learn humility, not through pain anymore, but through mercy." That day, the villagers watched something sacred unfold. A woman who once begged for bread lifted the one who once splashed her with mud. There were no miracles of thunder, no flashes of light, only quiet tears and a wind that seemed to sigh in relief. Days passed, and Amira began to heal. Her wounds closed. The itching ceased. Her strength returned little by little. She visited Mama Rahila often, helping her fetch water, clean her compound, and cook. But wealth never returned to her life. Her father's company was gone, her mansion sold, her friends vanished, yet peace found her where riches once failed. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, Amira sat beside Mama Rahila outside her small hut. The air smelled of roasted corn and wet grass. "Mama," Amira said quietly, "do you ever wish you could go back to the days before all this happened?" Mama Rahila smiled faintly. "No, my child. If not for that day, you would still believe money could buy heaven. And I would still be walking in darkness." Sometimes, pain opens eyes that comfort kept closed. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the crickets sing. As the moon rose, Amira looked up and whispered, "Thank you for forgiving me." Mama Rahila looked at her gently. "Don't thank me, my child. Thank the one who turned your punishment into a lesson and my tears into sight." Years later, people often told the story of the proud rich girl who mocked a blind beggar and was saved by her forgiveness. It became a lesson passed from mothers to daughters, fathers to sons. And every time it rained in Kombesa, the elders would say, "The heavens still remember that day. The rain that once punished, now blesses." No matter how high you rise, never forget the ground that carries you, for pride can blind, but humility restores sight. Long after Mama Rahila's death, Amira built a small shelter in her honor, a home for blind widows and poor women. At its entrance, carved on wood, were the same words found on the buried staff. "The blind see more than the proud, for they walk with God."